All right, I think it is about that time. Jacob, are you ready to go? We'll let a few more people trickle in. Um, but I think we're ready to kick this thing off. Sound
Sure.
good? Cool, awesome. So, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Tuesday. Welcome to our June webinar in our Outsourcing Possibilities series. So, today we're going to be discussing how to maximize efficiency while cutting costs within your business. And I'm really excited to get going. Happy you all were able to join. I do see some names that I know as well as some that I don't. So, welcome everybody. Before we get started, feel free to drop any of your questions in the Q&A box as we go. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to have time to get to some of those at the end. But for those of you who are brand new to FGC Plus and our organization, FGC Plus is a full service outsourcing company. We've been in business for 13 years and we service a wide variety of clients and industries, but at the core, we enable companies to scale while reducing their overhead costs at the same time through our comprehensive service, which includes recruitment, training, management, and consultative strategic growth planning. So, to introduce myself a little bit more as well, for those of you who I have not met before, I'm Susannah Blexrud, Director of Growth and Revenue at FGC Plus. Been in sales and account management for just about 10 years, and the last 4 of them with FGC Plus. Absolutely love what I do and love who I do it with. And speaking of, I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Mr. Jacob Bloom, who is our VP of Client Services and IT. Jacob, can you share a little bit about your background with all the people?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I sometimes describe myself as the luckiest person in the world to be able to have the opportunity to work on the things that I have the opportunity to and the experiences that I've been through in the past. So, over 15 years, I've been in the BPO industry, consulting, and had the pleasure of being able to work with awesome people in my past and currently, and a lot of awesome companies out there as well. So, really excited to be able to kick this webinar off and continue this webinar series with all of you.
Yay, awesome. And I know that you are really excited to get going. This is your area of expertise. You are our subject matter expert. I know that you're ready to drop some knowledge on everybody. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting off, Jacob, can you discuss the more traditional BPO or business process outsourcing methods or practices and how they might differ from some of the newer ones?
Yeah, sure. So I think whether we call it kind of original or traditional, I think these can also be defined as, value driven or human centric, traditional types of BPOs compared to the progressive ones, which can be defined like tech driven, AI enhanced, kind of innovative. So I'd say the progressive BPOs are typically dealing with over 1 million contacts on an annual basis or interactions. And where contact deflection are ways to really, save costs or have an enhanced analytics are more of a premium for those progressive BPOs as more of the original BPOs kind of are a little bit more catered to the small medium businesses and cover that all-inclusive full service along with the specific resource or function being outsourced.
Got it. And why do you think traditional proven outsourcing methods are important for those small to medium sized businesses, especially in today's fast changing market?
Yeah, I'd say the original, BPOs are more fit for the small, medium-sized businesses where those models are typically just more straightforward. And it also includes the end-to-end management of that specific role being outsourced. So this is the recruiting, the training, quality control, performance management, in addition to just, outsourcing that particular role. And I think that benefits a lot of small, medium-sized companies that are, certainly growing and scaling in their own right. So this takes that burden off a lot of that administrative work, some may call it, around just that specific function being outsourced.
Yeah, like you said, really, really value driven when it comes to what the original method can do for the small, medium sized businesses. Um, and along with that, when we look at the benefits of the original outsourcing models, right? How does original outsourcing, value driven, so to speak, contribute to cost savings while also enhancing quality and overall outcomes?
Yeah, sure. So outsourcing, specifically outsourcing to offshore locations, is certainly going to be just the largest cost savings, companies can realize just by, outsourcing that to an offshore location. This is simply the cost of living, right? And employee expenses in, those outsourced locations is going to be much lower than that in the US. So right from there, you're going to be able to, realize cost savings for that labor being done offshore. You know, at the same time, the employees still possess the necessary skills and experience to do the work at the same level or even better as employees in the US. So it's also an advantage getting someone offshore that has, more experience than someone level in the US. And offshore, they might come with, higher experience. So it could be higher experience and lower cost than having someone entry level and a higher cost in the US.
And even to that point, right? Like an all-inclusive solution is not only replacing the salary or the skills, right, of the specific talent. You're looking at, recruitment support, management support that can also contribute to that cost savings um, as well. And how would you say that directly impacts quality and overall outcomes,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think a lot of those functions or areas, call them administration, that lives outside of that particular role being outsourced, oftentimes gets overlooked, right? So the recruiting, the training, the quality control, I think a lot of those things get overlooked, and a lot of small, medium-sized companies, for the most part, may not have a lot of those functions or those defined departments and functions in their company. So being able to go with an outsourced provider with, full service delivery model, we're going to make sure that all those items are included in addition to just that particular function being outsourced.
Yeah, and to that point, it's a pain point that I hear about a lot as well, right? If maybe growing a particular area is bottlenecked by their internal recruitment process or the way that they're internally managing that specific function, which is costly, again, as you said, from a time standpoint as well as financial. Um, so what are should we go into maybe some specific methods or strategies that can allow for these companies to achieve both, right? What are some specific methods aside from, what we already talked about that can lead to these ideal outcomes, right? Like, what do we go through with our clients when we start working with them?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd say outsourcing really isn't a new model. It's been around for many, many years. And, that said, the skills and experience of a lot of the countries that have outsourcing has just grown over the years, right? It's been around for so long. The skills and experience has been around and growing with that growth of outsourcing. So, this means that you'll be able to find great, experienced, talented workers in these offshore locations that have experience working for US based companies really for their entire career, right? So they, go to school, and there's particular things that are for supporting US based companies. And then they have the experience of throughout their career working for these US based companies. So I think just overall companies now have just so much more of an increased talent and experience pool when it comes to a lot of the common roles that are, currently being outsourced today. And so I think what you'll find is, immediately those cost savings, right? Because the cost of living, the wages is just lower in these offshore locations than in the US. I'll ask on one of our moderators, panelists, if they could go to a graphic. There's one that we have here just showing cost savings. So this is an example of just one person. So one person in, in the US or in-house captive for this example is for medical biller. They could be average cost could be just over, $3,000 every month compared to someone in offshore. That fully loaded cost is going to be 1,900 per month. So that's an estimated savings over $1,000 every month for just one person. So that cost savings is definitely easy to get from that perspective. And if you go to the next slide, you won't sacrifice any degradation in service or experience. So again, as we talked about, outsourcing been around for years and years and years, so has particular, medical billing, right? Medical billing has been something that's been outsourced for years and years. And now we have people with years and years of experience who have grown up in the industry, grown up with medical billing, and now they're able to, perform that task usually better than entry-level folks in the US. So this is an example here. We comparing practices doing billing in-house versus outsourcing. And you'll see just the efficiency, right, of being able, for this example, claims being paid within 30 days and claims being paid on their first submission. So these are things that are common opportunities for a lot of US-based companies with even US-based workforce today. And through the benefit and experience of a lot of the tenure of medical billers that are going to be in these offshore locations, a lot of times they're able to do even a better job of managing, in this example, claims or just, full end-to-end medical billing while you're still saving costs.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're highlighting that because something that we always like to talk about with our clients, or maybe before they start working with us, is okay, so it's that much less expensive. So what am I sacrificing? Right? Because we're so taught, that cheaper is you're sacrificing something, right? Going to, you know, McDonald's for a burger versus going to, Manny's Steaks where I live, where I'm from. It's different. Quality is different, but that's not the case with outsourcing, particularly when you go with the right vendor and the right model for your business goals. So that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Thank you for hitting on that. I want to empower those who are on the call or perhaps watching the recording to be able to come away from this webinar with some tangible steps that they can take to potentially identify some outsourcing opportunities within their small mid-sized business. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have some takeaways for our participants, how they could maybe identify within their own organization?
We do, yeah.
Yeah,
For all of the attendees and participants in today's webinar, you will be provided a link to, we are calling it an outsource readiness checklist, and it'll take you through some really great questions just to kind of get your thoughts in a good space to be able to kind of take you through
amazing.
a lot of the
Yep.
common kind of questions that most folks want to go through to identify what their outsourcing opportunities are and what readiness can look like for them to be able to have discussions with potential outsourcing companies to understand their solutions. So I think this checklist is going to be a great, thing for a lot of folks to go through, especially outsourcing for the first time. But even if you've done it before, it's certainly worth looking into.
Yeah, I would concur with that. It makes it digestible specifically for those smaller mid-sized businesses who don't have experience with outsourcing. It can sometimes be a lot to wrap your head around in terms of all of the different value adds and aspects to an outsourcing partner and what they can provide. So this will be a great tool. Can you go into some of the criteria that they might want to consider when they're, addressing their own operations for potential outsourcing? Like, what do
Yeah,
we have up there?
certainly. So, I mean, it'll really just start overall with you kind of looking at your current operations, and then from there, identifying, core versus non-core activities. Once you can kind of parse those out, you'll want to look through those areas with kind of a lens of what's my employee expenses look like for those areas? What does my company's personal experience, even expertise with some of these activities look like? My ability to kind of scale on demand some of these, we know that volume can fluctuate throughout the year, and being able to kind of scale up or down is something that will certainly help companies with with costs that they're going to have if they really don't need as many employees during a span of some months. So they could, benefit from being able to scale those with a vendor. And then technology requirements. What technology requirements, both hardware, software, is really needed to deliver on that function? And is partnering with a vendor something to consider when it comes to leveraging some of the technologies that a lot of vendors have today that companies may or may not have?
So some infrastructure as well in that regard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. And, you know, I'm going to zoom in because I had a question on my own. Can you talk about if somebody, let's see, here's what I have to zoom in, you guys. I don't have my glasses on me, so you'll have to excuse me. I wanted you to expand a little bit more on potentially, because you discussed scaling up, scaling down, like how easily are you able to do that on demand? Kind of a tangent off of that, but how would you recommend a company who's considering outsourcing when they're looking at their overall scaling plans and how they want to and envision themselves growing throughout the next 6, 12, 18, whatever time increment months? How should they also look at outsourcing?
Yeah, I think part of that checklist will have some of it as well, but just kind of at a macro level, I think
Yeah,
we look at scaling up or down. Typically, that's going to follow volume, right? So
yeah,
work volume, how much work is coming across people's desks on a given day or month, and then following that work equals how much staff do I need to really do that work with how fast that work needs to be done. So most companies that look at, what does your volume look like today? And I think that checklist will take you through some of those areas to define what some of those activities are, and then what volume really consists in each of those activities. And then hopefully, I think a lot of the benefits that outsourcing can leverage how we can help determine what staffing looks like for you. So we
yeah.
can look at the volume, look at what is turnaround time for this volume look like, right? How quickly once something comes across my desk or someone's desk, how quickly does that need to be off their desk and continued back down the funnel or to the next person? I think what a lot of outsourcing companies can do, especially at FGC Plus, is we can take a look at your volume, take a look at all those assumptions, and identify the staff requirements that are going to be needed for you to obtain, really your goals, how quickly you want to get that work done. And we're able to provide a forecast along with the budget to help just manage those expectations so you can be in the know of how much, spend you're looking at for a given time period.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I was hoping that you would hit on is what if I know like where I want to be, but I don't know how soon it's going to happen or how quickly I can get there. And of course, depending on the model, the one that we have at FGC Plus, it includes that workforce management and that forecasting, budget planning, and all of that. And that is something that you'd be really surprised. A lot of C-levels, decision makers, even at those small, mid-sized businesses, don't really have a grasp on how they're, making those growth projections. So I'm glad that you were able to hit on that. I think we might have some questions popping in. Jacob, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we try to answer some of these questions from our participants?
No, I don't think anything further. It looks like we do
Okay.
have a few questions. Look like those questions are great topics for us.
Okay, amazing. So I will just kind of start rolling through. And again, guys, for those of you who are on, feel free, excuse me, to pop in any follow-ups, any questions that you have. We'll try to get to some of these here. Um, okay, so I have one here that says, how is this model different essentially than what I'm getting from with a VA? So I think they're asking like how this model or the original model is different than perhaps just hiring, you know, a remote VA like on Upwork or something. That's kind of what I was getting from that.
Yeah, great question. And I think VA is kind of recent, at least, it's really become more recent, certainly since COVID. But I really think the key distinct difference is, so in the VA model, companies will typically hire a virtual assistant, and they're really just that. They're really just an assistant, an extension of an individual. It could be an executive, it could be a particular person in the company that they're kind of shadowing and kind of helping to support. Uh, happens is you end up just hiring that VA. You're really responsible for really training them, getting them up to speed in terms of how they can best support you, where, a full service model will really be that comprehensive, right, solution where it's encompassing all those other specific business functions in addition to that role being outsourced. So in this case, let's call it a VA, but let's call it maybe a bookkeeper or a medical biller. So those end-to-end functions that surround just that individual person is going to be things like recruiting, hiring, training, quality control, performance management, all those crucial things to make sure that the work that's being done, is done in the correct way and supportive of the company's goals and objectives.
Yeah, and what I like to say as well when I get this question is for sure with a VA model, there's going to be cost savings involved, likely, right? Nobody's denying that. However, there are likely not a whole lot of positives that come from that model in terms of operational efficiency. As Jacob mentioned, you're still handling all of the training, the recruitment. What if that person quits? You have to start all over. Um, Also, there are some positions, and Jacob, you let me know if you disagree, but there are some roles that a VA type model, I wouldn't ever necessarily say is superior to a full service model for, but there are certainly some that it's more appropriate for, right? So I think where some companies get into trouble is, they have a need to, for example, and this is a real example, right? Scale up their call center. Again, small to mid-sized businesses, so call center is, you know, 5 to 10 people, let's say, right? But what they're doing is they're trying to kind of piece together different VAs, so to speak, who maybe do have customer service experience, but all from Upwork, right? So they're kind of trying to manage, screening and, that onboarding process maybe at different times. And it can be a lot. And there's really no safeguards in terms of attrition, and in terms of streamlining. So it ends up being more of a headache than it really needs to be. Um, if you are somebody who perhaps needs somebody to help you with your calendar for, 5 to 10 hours a week, and you don't foresee that need ever really changing, yeah, perhaps a VA model might be a more on, a freelance site might be a more appropriate opportunity for you. But I like to make that distinction as well, because I think the VA model gets tricky when you try to quote unquote make it work for you a little bit too much. So
Definitely.
yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. Um, how do I know what roles or processes I should consider outsourcing? So you kind of touched on that, but do we maybe want to elaborate a little bit? You mentioned not non-core, core non-core functions,
Yeah.
something we always like to say, but yeah, maybe we can repeat or elaborate on that too.
Yeah, I would say that the outsourcing readiness checklist is a great reference for those of you on this webinar. And again, first time outsources, absolutely. Even if you've done it before, great to kind of check out and kind of refresh. But I think maybe the thing to hit on here is just really, I'll just briefly talk about the difference of core, non-core. I think some people might be, well, what's core, what's non-core? So
Yeah, for sure.
I would say core is really those essential functions that really contribute to the company's primary mission or their competitive advantage, their value proposition. These are things like R&D or product innovation or production processes or product design, right? So those kind of high value types of activities versus non-core, just really the opposite, that non-central to the company's primary missions. but these are still important. So, I mean, these are certainly important to kind of, lack of better words, keep the lights on. For example, these are like administrative support. These could be payroll. This could be some type of help desk. This could be bookkeeping. This could be customer service. This could be even medical billing. So those could be some of the brief differences, I'd say, between core and non-core.
Yeah, and I think that that's always good to highlight as well is core versus non-core versus specific functions, because specifically at FGC Plus, we're industry agnostic, right? So of course, if you are an e-commerce company, medical billing doesn't apply to you, but it's again the core and the non-core that you have to determine for your own business, and then you can plug in your outsourcing partner there, usually for the most part. I think we have time for one, maybe two more. Um, Original BPO. Okay, this is a question pertaining to original BPO companies, so that value add, and do they do everything manually? What does technology look like?
Yeah.
So I think they're asking, because you mentioned like more tech driven for the newer, like they're asking that, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, that's a great question. I can't speak for all BPO companies, all of the original, traditional, or human-centric, but I can say this is true for FGC Plus, and I'm sure it is for a lot of others, that we absolutely still leverage technology and automation where we can. I'd say the difference is, that human-centric or original, its technology solutions aren't what drive our solutions and recommendations. So, for example, the more kind of tech-driven or progressive BPOs, they're really partnering again with companies with, over 1 million contacts or interactions in a year, where there's a larger opportunity to save costs on deflecting some of those interactions. So some of the tech and AI that is going to be there is going to be like self-service, chatbots, excuse me, or enhanced CX or customer sentiment analytics type of you know, advantages and tools compared to original or human-centric BPOs, where we kind of leverage, I'll call it more the fundamental technologies, such as telephony CRMs and order management systems, all of those different tools a lot of companies still use. There's still going to be technology and automation inside a lot of those tools that are still going to be leveraged to streamline things as much as we can. We just won't have to add some of that AI stuff in addition to that. I'm assuming as companies grow, there's certainly opportunity to kind of leverage some of those things like chatbots and self-service. But as you're starting off and as you're kind of small and medium, it's really kind of taking care of those fundamental or basic things.
Yep, I completely echo that. I think we might have time for one more, if I can answer it quickly. It's a pretty basic one. It's how long does it take to essentially start, like, what is the process? Like, how long does it take to start working with a BPO? I can take this one. So every BPO is going to be a little bit different. So I can only speak for FGC Plus, but in summary, we recruit based on the specific needs of our clients. So we typically allow for about 30 days for recruitment time as you're starting out. A couple weeks in there for training as well. Building a knowledge base is absolutely the most important thing when working with our company. At least we want to adopt your model, tweak it, enhance it as much as possible. So there's there's a lot of planning that goes into to implementing the project. So usually we can have you up and running in about 6 weeks. We aim for it to be a little bit shorter, but we like to under promise and over deliver on that. And if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to me as well. I'll be happy to talk with you more about that. But we are coming up on the top of the hour. So I don't think we have time for any more questions. I'm so sorry, guys. If we didn't get to your questions, we will get to them after this. I will make sure that I send you an email and we make sure that we get all your questions answered. So my hope is that you were able to leave today with some tangible action steps that will help you, evaluate where your business is at and how to maximize efficiency as you grow. As I said, if we didn't get to your questions, Jacob or myself will be reaching out to get you an answer. Any additional questions as to how outsourcing might be able to benefit you, I'm always happy to connect with you, answer any questions. And keep an eye on your LinkedIn. Follow us if you haven't already, as well as your inbox for an invite to our next webinar. It'll be in the fall. And I want to thank you all for spending your lunch hour or late morning hour with us. Jacob, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, thank you so much, Susannah, and all of you for attending. Really appreciate it. And check out that outsourcing readiness checklist. I think it's a
Yes.
great resource.
Yes, 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 yes. Outsourcing readiness checklist is coming to you. Thank you guys.
I guess.